In this video, we're going to be going over AI for everyone, and this is our part 2 video inside of this series. And specifically inside of this video, we're going to look at an introduction to what machine learning actually is. So let's get started with this video. So introduction to machine learning. So machine learning is primarily about mapping inputs A to outputs B. So you can think of machine learning as if there's a brand new company and they're trying to create a model. And inside of this model, basically when you provide an input A, then the model is going to respond to you and they're going to give an output B back. So you can think of machine learning like that, and we're going to look at some examples of it in the next slide. And also this type of mapping is called supervised learning. So if we take the same example of the model that we're using for inputs A to get an output B, basically what we need to do is we need to label every single one of the data, and once you label all the data, then that's called supervised learning. So let's look at some examples now of what machine learning is and what supervised learning is. So applications of supervised learning. So here you can see that there's a table and there's 3 different columns. The first one is for the input A, the second one is for the output B, and the third one is obviously the application. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is email. And inside of any type of email, you can see that there's a spam filter or a spam box. And basically whatever the email provider thinks is spam, then they automatically put that email inside of the spam folder or the spam box. So how can we actually train the model to do that? So basically what we do is we put an input A as an email, and basically what that means is whatever email we get is our input, and then our output would basically be if the email is spam or not. And then that application would be called the spam filter. And this is another example of machine learning because we have an input A and then we're creating an output B because of the spam filter. So now let's see how this actually relates to supervised learning. So as I said in the previous slide, supervised learning is basically where we label all the data. So once we're trying to actually train a model so that, for this case, we're trying to make it to see if the email is spam or not, what we have to do is we have to train the model with a lot of data. So in this case, we're going to feed the model with hundreds of thousands of different types of data about emails, and some of the emails may contain spam and some of the emails may not contain spam. So once we train the model and we give it about 10,000, for example, if we give the model 10,000 different emails, some of them are going to be spam and some of them are not. So then we're going to have to manually label which ones are spam or not. And that is what supervised learning is. So it's basically where you label all of the data and then you give it to the model and feed it. So then basically once you train the model with giving the emails that are spam or not and labeling them, then the model has a pretty good idea of what a spam email will look like. And basically what you can do after that is that you can test your model by giving a test email that has spam, and if the model gets that correct, then you know that you're good to go, and if it gets it wrong, then you might have to even provide even more data. So that's what supervised learning is, and here you can see inside of this chart there's many different examples of how you can use supervised learning, and I just explained the first one. For the second one, you can see that there's audio clips, so you can see that the audio clips would be the input, and then the output would be the text transcript, and then the application is speech recognition, and then there's also many more like the English text to the translated text. There's also the added information, and if the user clicks it or not would be the output, and there's many different ways that supervised learning can be helpful. So that basically summarizes an example that I explained of what supervised learning is and what machine learning is. So now we're going to talk about how machine learning these days have been increasing in performance compared to before or compared to traditional AI. So basically AI has really taken off recently due to the rise of neural networks and also deep learning. And in this case you can see that there's a picture in the middle, and I'm just going to explain it. And this picture summarizes about speech recognition. So before, when we first started, we only had traditional AI. So for speech recognition, the more amount of data we had, so you can see here this red line, even though it's at 100, the performance of the model, it was still pretty low. So it was just at 10. So you can see it's increasing, but it's really low. So that was the first thing that we had, which was traditional AI. And then after that, we have a small neural network. And then you can see that the performance is a little bit better. So even though it has the same amount of data, 100, you can see that the performance is way higher compared to the traditional AI. And then after that, we have a medium neural network. And you can see that the performance is even higher than the small one, even though there's the same amount of data. And then finally we have the large neural network, and even though the amount of data isn't even at 100, you can see that the performance is already skyrocketing. And basically, in conclusion, since AI has been taking off really fast recently, this graph basically just shows that the performance of the neural networks are really high compared to before, as we had traditional AI. And even though we don't have the same amount of data, even if we have less, then our performance is still going to be way higher. So now let's go into our conclusion for this video. So the rise of supervised learning in AI is fueled with the synergy of large datasets and powerful neural networks, offering transformative applications across industries. And inside of our next video, we're going to dive into the different types of data you might already have and how to effectively feed this data to AI systems for optimal performance. So just like what we talked about today, the machine learning, we're going to see how we can actually feed that type of data to the machines and get the input of A to the output of B. And that basically summarizes everything for this video. So thank you so much for watching from Try to Be Useful, and we'll see you guys in our next video.